Hello everyone, and welcome to our playthrough of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. And this will be our very first solo playthrough. It's just me today. So why am I doing this alone? Why don't we have Wesley here? Well, we've already done Sly 1 together before, a long time ago. We uploaded it to his channel. I would not recommend trying to track it down. It was like 10 plus years ago that we attempted it. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have the right technology or know-how or the equipment, so I wanted to... There were a couple of reasons why I wanted to do Sly 1 here, and one of them was just because we already did Sly 2 and 3 on this channel, so I wanted to round out the trilogy. But didn't see a reason to bring in Wesley to do this all over again. But actually a big reason was because I wanted a redemption arc on recording the game, as I went over in Sly 3. I made a mistake when I was recording the footage for Sly 2 and 3 in regards to the emulator that I was using. And that meant that the footage had some errors, the dynamic shadows weren't there, which caused some problems, and it didn't look as nice as it could have. But I did it correctly here for Sly 1, even though I think that I would have had the dynamic shadows anyway. But now, the game, this is a lot closer to the quality that you would have gotten if I had known what I knew now when I started doing Sly 2 and 3. So this game was a lot shorter than I remembered. I knew that it was shorter than 2 or 3. 2 and 3 ended up being about the same length in terms of our playthrough like footage. This one ended up being quite short, and that means that the parts are shorter than we're used to. So, and I thought that this would be a good opportunity for me to see how I could do a solo playthrough.
Hold down the circle button near blue auras. I'm on it.
So I had to make numerous attempts at recording this first part. I had a bit of trouble getting it just right. There were a couple of reasons for that. It's actually kind of hard when we get to this section up here. I actually got hit by Carmelita a couple of times, and that didn't make for good footage. But also, I wanted to make this a 100% playthrough where I would get all of the bottles on screen, and I kept messing up. So after that, all of the recordings went pretty smoothly, though. So this is interesting. It looks like they have wanted posters here for Panda King and Ms. Ruby, as well as like a monkey character that I don't think... Maybe that was like a character that they had planned and scrapped at some point.
That door must be super reinforced, Sly. Maybe there's a way to get around it.
It's interesting. I would have expected for Sly to, in this game, if he hits something like a vault, his cane will like bounce off of it, and they didn't do that for the red door, and I think that they should have. I think it would have been nice to indicate that, hey, this door is super reinforced.
Try dialing in 937.
This whole opening section is just so iconic. I absolutely love it.
Nice job. You got it.
I think that they wanted to recapture some of this energy, which is why they had the first area in Sly 2 also take place in Paris at night. And I never really stopped to look around inside the Carmelita's office here, but, you know, she's got some pictures of Sly and of Murray and Bentley. It looks like she's been tracking their movements.
Criminal! You foolish raccoon. I've caught you red-handed.
Ah, Carmelita. I haven't seen you since I gave you the slip in Bombay.
Which reminds me, you need to return the Firestone of India to its rightful owners.
And I was gonna give it to you as a little token of my... Hey.
I wonder who the rightful owners are. I mean, Sly only steals from thieves, but like...
This pistol
was the Firestone stolen from someone else that he then stole it from? I don't know.
Love to stick around and chat, but I just dropped by to pick up this case file. I think you've had it long enough.
So I think it's very clever what they did with the fire escape here. Carmelita's shooting at you, but there's no chance of her hitting you, but she is destroying it around you, so you know, okay, bad news. You get the idea of how fast her projectiles move, how they move. But yeah, I actually took some bad jumps and died here, and you actually have to start all over again, so at that point you might as well just start over the whole recording.
Once again, my gang and I had given Inspector Carmelita Fox the slip. I was surprised to see how well she took it. Finally, the secret.
This art style is very interesting. They changed it to a different art style for the animated cutscenes in Sly 2 and kept it for 3.
It all began when I was just a kid.
But for the thumbnails for the Sly series, I always try and use stuff from the animated cutscenes. It's actually kind of hard because I found that it's so simple that finding interesting thumbnails out of the footage is actually kind of difficult.
Why we specialize in stealing from criminals. After all, there's no honor, no challenge, no fun stealing from ordinary people. You rip off a master criminal, and you know you're a master thief. Well, on the night I was supposed to inherit the book, 5 visitors came unannounced to our door. My father fought to protect us, but the gang of villains known as the Fiendish Five overpowered him and ransacked our house until they found the Thievius Raccoonus. Our family's manual of thieving greatness fell into their filthy hands.
It makes you wonder why they, the Fiendish Five, even cared about the Thievius Raccoonus so much. I mean, they didn't seem to use it. Mugshot in particular didn't seem to care. It seemed like it was mostly a clockwork thing.
Lifelong buddies and trusted crew. Bentley, techno genius and strategist supreme, and Murray, part-time driver and full-time burden. Together we pledged to track down the Fiendish Five.
It really feels like Murray was underutilized in this game. He doesn't show up too often, and it's clear that they didn't have a real idea of where to go with his character until Sly 2.
Or fail and allow my family name to bite the dust.
That was a nice piece of work back there at police headquarters, Sly. Come see me if you
I wonder where this is, because when I first played this as a kid, I kind of thought that this was in the back of the van, but it's way too big. It can't be. So I'm wondering where this hideout is. Yes, and just like in Sly 2, we have very limited options in terms of control stick inversion. This was back before we really knew what we were doing and thought that, just do something and it'll be fine. The definitions of normal and inverted weren't quite nailed down, so they didn't even let us... I mean, in this game, you can't even tilt the camera up and down, just left and right.
This hot-tempered frog grew bored of his life of luxury and privilege. On a whim, he tried his hand at a bit of piracy and found it to his liking. Raleigh, who quickly became addicted to crime, was brought into the Fiendish Five as chief machinist, where his evil tinkering genius rose to new heights. The last reported sighting of this mad machinist was off the soggy coast of the Isle of Wrath, a small island uncomfortably situated in the middle of the perilous Welsh Triangle.
When you really think about it, Raleigh is one of the most, like, despicable villains in this series. Like, most of them at least have some kind of tragic backstory or some kind of motivation behind what they do, even if it has long since gone completely out of control. Raleigh was just a rich kid who was bored and was like, and got his kicks with stealing from people, sinking their ships, and potentially killing them. There's really nothing redeemable about him.
Hey, Sly, I just spotted something that's going to complicate the mission. See that nasty-looking gate? It blocks the only road leading into Raleigh's hideout.
No problem. I'll just use my climb move.
Okay, but remember, on certain objects.
I think that the choice of the level here was very inspired. Like, I know that it changed drastically during development as they further developed Sly and his moveset. But the feel here, the color palette, the storm, the ships, everything I think sets a nice tone for the rest of the game. It's dark but not too sinister, but there is clearly something going on. I don't know. There's something about it that feels very right.
See if you can find any more clues. The more I have, the easier it'll be to crack the code.
So right there we had our first Raleigh enemy, which they all seem to be beavers or perhaps like walruses. And I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe that's another holdover of this being like the first area in the game, and they designed the enemies here long before they knew that this was going to be an evil frog's hideout. But I'm just not sure what the connection is where all of Raleigh's like lackeys are like beavers or walruses.
Hold on, Sly. See those searchlights? One careless step, and you'll be subjected to acute combustion.
It's more like 2 wrong steps, because here we have the pattern of you get caught once, the alarm goes off, and then if you get caught again, then you get hurt. Later games would make it so that lasers just immediately hurt you, but that's because you had a health bar to work with. The fact that Sly's a 1 hit point wonder in this game obviously meant that they had to give the player a little bit of leeway. Otherwise, it would be way too frustrating.
According to my amphibio positioning system, that big blimp is where Raleigh is hiding out.
Some of Bentley's stuff in this game borders on, like, Adam West Batman gadgets, like the Bat Frog Detector. Whereas in later games, they tried to tone down the silliness of that and make it at least somewhat plausible that Bentley was using just normal-ish technology in creative and intelligent ways. I remember the first time I discovered that you could kill those bees. Thought it was cool. So here's another thing that's a little strange. So the game wanted to use blue sparkles as an indicator that you can hold down circle to do something here, but they only did it for some things, like shimmying across thin ledges, where I guess because it was difficult to see that that's where it could be done. But then you had things like poles and those hooks that you interact with them in the same way, but it doesn't use the sparkles to indicate it. And I think that was one thing that they wanted to change in Sly 2 to be more consistent. You also note that Sly's old design here with the red backpack, whereas it turned into a red pouch on his leg in Sly 2 and onwards. I think the backpack matched the more, Saturday morning cartoon vibe of this game, but the pouch was the better idea for a slightly more a slightly older audience that they were targeting with Sly 2. So every time you get close to a vault in this game, Bentley comes out and says, press circle to enter the vault code. And I'm not sure why they had him say that every time. Like, I got it the first time. Again, you could have just put sparkles in front of it when it's ready, and then you wouldn't have to have Bentley jump in and say that every time.
Thievius Raccoonus. This page teaches old Drake Cooper's fast attack dive move. Press the triangle button to use it.
And here we have the mechanic where there's a bunch of moves that Sly can get, and they're all mapped to the triangle button, and you just use L2 and R2 to switch between which ones you want to use. Which, like a lot of things in this game, it feels like this era where we're still trying to figure out how to really embrace 3D design and the new controllers. Developers were still very laser focused on face buttons around this time. They weren't quite sure what to use most of the shoulder buttons for, which is why a lot of games around this era, they tended not to have anything really big on L2 and R2. Like, this was, I believe, the same year that Kingdom Hearts 1 came out, 2002. And in that game, camera controls were still done with L2 and R2, and the right stick was used for navigating the command menu.
Why?
Because it's impossible to get near him. To access Raleigh's blimp, you would have to sneak through that high voltage power tube. To do that without getting electrocuted, you'd have to destroy that power generator. And to do that, you'd need 2 more of Raleigh's treasure keys, which are heavily guarded.
Interesting. So when are you gonna get to the impossible part?
Fine. But I warned you. I've marked the areas you need to hit with holographic markers. Follow them to your objectives.
Thanks.
Don't mention it. It's your funeral.
So the structure of Raleigh's hideout here is actually a bit different from the 3 after it. We have 5 levels out in front. Well, there's the beginning level, then 4 out here. Then you have an expanded section of the hub that's behind the 3 key thing, and then 2 more levels after that. Whereas every other one, it goes 1, 3, 3. Listen to Raleigh for a minute here. So there, once again, we get a bit of Raleigh, and we know up front that, yeah, he's just a really bad dude. And I think it was a very good idea to have a couple of intercom announcements from the villains before we meet them, so we get a little bit of their personality before they reveal themselves. Typically we get one in the opening area, and then another one in a random level later.
Eureka! We're in the engine room! My analysis tells me that if you trace the spinning crankshaft all the way back to its source, you'll find Raleigh's treasure key and sabotage his machine while you're at it.
So this level seems to be based around that spinning crankshaft. Basically, there's a spinning thing that connects to other things, and it turns, and it's this whole drive, and so that's what kind of ties the level together. And I think it's really nice. It's a good idea to base a level around.
Near the blue stealth auras to perform super sneaky thief moves.
So right here, this bottle is one that is easily missed, and I actually missed it on my first attempt at recording this, and that is what prompted me to start over, and then I had a string of unsuccessful attempts after that before I finally got it right. Maybe it's just my perfection, and it would have been fine if I had gone back and gotten it later, but I don't know, I just wanted to get everything in one go as much as possible. I always remember this part right here, because I would always try to either miss every bottle or get every bottle on the way in. Because if you mess up here, there's no way you can go back and get these without restarting the level. But I would try to either, you know, make them all fall down, or none of them fall down, which is what I was able to accomplish right there. So just to be clear, this is, I sort of hinted at it earlier, but this is post-commentary. I recorded this, and it's just the way I like to do things. We tried to do a little bit of me doing live playthrough before. That playthrough didn't quite work out. I'm just not sure that I can do live commentary on playing. I think that's what we did for Super Mario 64, but Wesley did it, and I think that worked out fine. But I just like having control over the footage and making it so that what's on screen is only what's important to be seen. So, you know, I don't want to have to worry about, you know, going back through long sections of a level after I die and being like, hey, okay, what do we talk about now? So I guess I already talked about this with the other two Sly games, but yes, in case the aspect ratio didn't give it away, this is the original PS2 version, not the PS3 remaster, and that's for a couple of reasons. I own the PS3 remaster, and I have played it. I don't care for it. That was Sanzaru before they made Sly 4. It was basically proved that they could handle the Sly series, and I'm not sure that they proved it as well as they might have thought. The remaster has a couple of problems. The widescreen conversion is just not terribly good. They just expanded the field of view, and that was that. They didn't account for all of the times in which the assets on screen were not designed for widescreen. So, like, Binocucom overlays just don't stretch to the far end of the screen. Letterboxing doesn't always extend to the full screen. I'm betting that they were just that they were short on time. You know, there was some sort of oh, right there, I spun past 7 because it can do that. So put in the wrong thing and it still opened. That happens one time later as well, but I'm guessing that Sanzaru had some kind of time crunch and they just couldn't get everything done right. But I don't know. If you ask me, maybe it's just my nostalgia, but if you ask me, you're better off playing the original PS2 versions of the Sly trilogy than the PS3 version. And I mean, I would imagine that they're about equivalently accessible these days, since the PS3 isn't a modern platform, and modern platforms like the PS5 aren't backwards compatible with it, so you might as well just get the PS2 version. Yeah, this level has a nice setup and payoff. You know, we're following this spinning thing throughout the whole thing, and then we stop it at the end. And now we've got treasure key. Going back to the overall structure of Raleigh's hideout, where we have 1 level and then 4 and then 2. It's probably a consequence of Raleigh's area clearly being the one that they were working on from the beginning. You know, these were the first levels that they designed, and it wasn't until they got them right that they kind of moved on and started building out stuff for Mugshot and his Ruby. So these ones are more likely to have artifacts of earlier stages of development.
Sly, look at all this stuff. Must be worth millions. And you know what that means? Insider security. You're gonna have to be extra sneaky to get the treasure key here.
So let's destroy it all. This level always stood out to me as like the perfect representation of this game. Like, no frills, nothing too special about it in a good way. It's just like, this is pure distilled Sly 1 right here. And of course, you can jump right over a couple of the laser gates. So the game's pretty exploitable. Fairly easy.
Dude, this is the vault, but you need more clues.
Yeah, so I ended up structuring this as 2 parts per chapter, per, like, you know, villain hideout. And I thought that the second half of Raleigh was going to be a lot longer than it was, but it was really quite short. So I ended up having to split it a bit differently. But also, every other chapter in this game has... The opening level is a standard Sly level, then you have, I think, 3 more, maybe it's 4, after that, and then 2 vehicle levels, whereas here, there's only 1 vehicle level. So there's a lot more pure platforming here, which once again indicates that this level was where they were trying to get the basic gameplay down pat, and so they had 1 extra level's worth of stuff to do, and then for the later ones, they made 1 fewer, and padded it out with more vehicle stuff. And I think that's the reason why I would say that Raleigh's level is Roiled is probably my favorite in the game. Because it cuts out all the fat. There's very little. It's mostly just pure Sly gameplay. One thing I wasn't expecting when I went back to this game after all these years was that I found myself comparing it to the Spyro games on PS1 quite a bit. I never played the classic Spyro games until just a few years ago when I got the Reignited Trilogy on PC. Oh, I miscalculated that jump. And so I was incapable of making this connection as a kid, but there's a lot of comparisons that could be made. I feel like the enemy design in this game is very similar to especially Spyro 1 enemy design, where it's mostly about avoiding their one attack and then getting in 1 hit and then you win.
Press the circle to enter the vault code. Whoever thought this code up knew what they were doing. Dial in 436.
And the structure of the game is very similar. You know, it's in Spyro, the hubs are straight up levels in and of themselves. In Sly, they're sort of like levels, but yeah, I would say the overall structure feels very familiar. I would not be surprised if there was a lot of Spyro being played in the Sucker Punch offices when this game was being made.
Into your binocucom. It'll show you the position of nearby clues and breakable objects.
So here's something that was actually fairly useful, being able to see breakables, but especially clues being marked as green objects. I do occasionally use this in this playthrough. Right here, just gonna cut back the backtracking back to the key. But yes, a lot of the abilities that you get from vaults are kind of... I never really use them. Maybe they're useful in certain circumstances, and I don't do that, but for the most part, they're fairly extraneous. Well, thank you for joining me on this first part of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. I will see you next time.